Alright fellas, now, I have come across a problem that I've been seeing more recently. Not a lot of hunters know how to kill geese. I know that is quite fanciful, but today fellas, we are going to be talking about goose killing. Not goose hunting, goose killing, which is technically goose hunting, but you know what I mean guys. So, step number one, we got to identify the problem. Well guys, let me just be frank. Here is the game plan on how to kill geese. Find where they're landing, decoy properly, that means, you know, make it more realistic. Call properly, which means don't overcall and don't undercall, which undercalling, if you're where they are, it's not gonna be a problem. But if you overcall, woo, we're gonna be running some problems. And finally, finishing the deal, which means shooting them, which is the easiest part of the whole thing. Okay guys, step one is find them, which for some of you guys is gonna be quite tricky, but honestly guys, it's gonna be quite the easiest part. If you can find where they are, and hope to God that they're on public land, but for some of the guys who are lucky, who have their own private estate, or can get on one of them big bastards, you can have yourself a full field day full of geese. But for the most part, fellas, most of us are gonna be struggling on the public land. But step one is to find where they're at. Now this is quite simple. You just drive around, notice with your eyes, and look around. Look around to find geese. Now, after you find said geese, you gotta make sure that they're either on public land, which is easier, or you gather up some courage, walk up to the property owner, and ask, may I please hunt on your land? Now, let's just say that you are now on the property. You can hunt on the property. Now, fellas, comes phase two of said plan. Okay, fellas, I forgot one thing. Let's just say you cannot get on said property. You can get next to it, or you can find where they're flying and then flag them in. But fellas, the easiest and the best way to do this is get on the X. Now the X, guys, is exactly where they want to be, where they want to eat, where they want is the main action spot for these geese. So fellas, if you can get on it or as close to the X as possible, you guys are going to be killing way more geese, and you're going to have a much better time, because if you're not where the geese are, I'm just going to say, fellas, you're not going to kill any geese. Now fellas, here comes the sad part. Now these are early season geese, or late season, whenever you're watching this, but for early season geese, they're going to be quite a little more stupid. So fellas, you can get away with a little more in your spread, but for the later season geese, you got to really make it more realistic. But fellas, we're going to be talking about spreads I've used the entire year that have worked. And fellas, you want to be set up in a spot which gives you all the advantage, which means if the wind's going, let's just say this way, you want to be facing that way too, because the geese, as a demonstration, the geese are going to be coming in like this, you know, all swerving, all circling in one big circle sometimes, and they're going to be taking a gander at your spread, taking looks to see if it looks realistic. And fellas, if the wind is going this way, you want to be facing that way, because when the geese finally fish, or they decide to land, they're gonna come swooping in, hopefully, and they're gonna be landing right in your face. Oh. And fellas, that's when you spring the attack and shoot them down. And fellas, that does sound simple, which sometimes it can be very simple, but there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more complicated factors that goes into it, which we're gonna go more in depth to right now. First off, you gotta make sure that you're covered. This doesn't matter if you're on water or land, if you're in a layout blind, or if you're in a, you know, a built-in blind, or you're just seeing the breeds. You have to be well hidden, because if these geese see you, they're gonna eject out of their landing, and then you're gonna have no geese. Now, next step of setting up the spread. After you get yourself all nice and hidden, or have your little house all nice and, you know, hidden and cozy. Now fellas, I'm going to be putting some spreads up on screen on a whiteboard just so you guys know what I'm saying, but these are spreads that have worked for me the entire year. I mean fellas, these things have pulled in geese after geese after geese, and I've shot at geese after geese after geese. Now all of them are different. I'm going to be putting up water spreads that I do and field spreads that I do up on screen. Now fellas, these are just some of the tactics that you can do to get yourself some geese. There's millions of spreads that you can do, but the more you do it fellas, the more you find what these geese like and what they don't like. So you just gotta get out there and try. Okay fellas, now it's time for the calling. Now calling can be quite the back and forth kind of deal. I mean, it can work fabulously, or it can absolutely sabotage you, because some of these geese don't like to be chattered at. But fellas, you also gotta remember, sometimes these geese do not like calling at all. I mean, they can just be coming in your spread, not make a single peep. I mean, you might not even know if they're there. And the best thing to do, fellas, is just to stay quiet, and do not sabotage yourself. Because fellas, if they're coming in on their own accord, you don't want to sabotage them, you want to freak them out. You just want them to fly into their doom, and then you can shoot them. Now fellas, important thing of calling is obviously reading the geese. You gotta make sure that you are on the same page with these geese. If they do not want to be talked at, you don't talk at them. If they want a lot of talking, you talk at them. I mean, this is a thing you just do not learn enough. Fellas, you just gotta get out there in the field and just listen to geese, listen to how they react to certain things, and then you just have way more success, because you'll just be picking up little things about how geese react to certain calls, and then you'll have a lot more success when calling at them for them to come down to you, and you can start shooting. Now fellas, we're gonna get into the decoys. Now fellas, there are many decoys you can use, and they're all effective, like silhouette decoys, sock decoys, full body decoys, like these two here. This one's a rubber one, which makes them more compact. This one here is a motion full body. Now he spins around, does a little twisty twist to get them bastards to come down. But this heifer right here is what I like to call a cupped wing goose decoy. Now he makes a lot of motion in the wind, and he makes it look like another landing geese, and he does his little dance, which usually in turn, hopefully, gets them geese to come down to where I can shoot them. And fellas, you also want to be using yourself a nice flag. Not exactly like that, but get the point, fellas. You want to be using a flag. Now, these are very effective in fields, because if you're in a layout blind, fellas, you want to be using this heifer. Now, since you're going to be amongst your decoys, you want to be doing this. You want to be doing that to make sure that you can put out some nice movement to get them the geese to come. Fellas, you want us to do something so nice that they come in, land almost on top of you, then you spray up for the attack, and you knock them all down. That is the goal. And fellas, I don't really have a personal favorite, you know, decoy. I use them all. I use my sock decoys, I use my full body decoys, I use these rubber heifers. I use whatever I have, whatever motion decoy that I have, whatever full body decoy I have. The only thing that really changes, fellas, is about the mount I use, depending on the spot. Like if I'm on the X, I'll use, let's just say 2 dozen. Or if I'm flagging at geese, I'm gonna bring out the whole spread, and then we're gonna be trying to bring these bastards down off their little route, so they come down to us for some odd reason, and then we can kill them. But fellas, if I had to layer it like this, I'll put your finest looking decoys, I mean the finest of decoys, up front where you want them to land, you know, so they can see them pretty decoys, the pretty ones, and you keep the ugly ones in the back. That's how I usually like to do it. But mainly, fellas, is being where they want to be, making the right spread for them to come down correctly, because you do not want these things landing all the way behind you if you're in a field, because then you gotta spring up, and by the time you even turn around, they're already flying in the other direction. Speaking of geese, they're coming for me. And for all the fellas that are just starting out, if I had to restart again, I would buy myself 20 decoys. Now, these could be silhouettes, these could be stock decoys, or they can be full body decoys if you're a baller. But the main thing is getting some goose decoys and increasing the spread as you go on. Now, this is gonna take some time, fellas, unless you got some pay dirt to spread around. But what I would do if I was starting out again, I'll buy myself 2 dozen decoys, and I'll increase the spread and buy full body decoys so those geese can look at those and be seduced. Here they come, boys. Flying some of this action. Just kidding, fellas. Now, these bastards are a little too excited, but on another note, fellas, we're going to be going to the most expensive part, besides decoys, the weapon of choice. Now, this could be a 20 gauge, it can be a 12 gauge, or if you're a real baller, it can be a 10 gauge. Now, fellas, what I recommend is a nice, seductive 12 gauge. Now, this could be a very versatile weapon. It can be used for ducks, it can be used for geese, and we'll put a nice hurting on them. But fellas, if you have a 20 gauge, that'll work. If you have a 12 gauge, that'll work. If you have a 10 gauge, that'll most definitely work. But the main thing, fellas, is finding yourself a nice, reliable weapon, and then putting yourself a choke and getting ready for the goose hunt. And fellas, to finish this off, we're going to be going over a quick overview of what we just talked about for the beginners or anybody that's confused. So, step 1, you want to find the geese. You want to find where they at, or get as close to where they at. Step 2, you want to set up in the correct spot where the wind's going to be favorable and where the geese want to be, or as close as where they want to be. And this can include water and land. 4, you want to call at them correctly. You want to make sure that your calling is nice and gentile, or if they like it, more aggressive. Making some aggressive calls. And it's about reading the geese, which goes into step 5. Reading the geese. We're learning how to read the geese, read them correctly, so you can have them come in without any hiccups. Step 6, self-explanatory. Choose the right weapon, which you guys most likely will have. And finally, fellas, step 7. Kill him! But fellas, this concludes our little teaching lesson for the day. Now, if you guys have any questions, just comment down below what I missed, or if you have any question about certain topics. But fellas, if you guys want to see more of this type of thing of goose hunting, and fellas, we're going to be doing ourselves a duck killing lesson later on in the near future. But fellas, if you want to see more of this sort of like goose killing lessons, just comment down below saying you want to see some of this action. And fellas, I hope I taught you something today, but on another note, this sadly means is the end of the teaching lesson. Thanks for watching. If you guys want to see a carp fishing video down here, and of course you guys want to see a survive on a mountain video down here. Besides that, I'll see y'all next video. See ya!